Welcome to the Ohio Arts Council's Rife Gallery programming series for our current show. It's an honor to be here, curated by Maria Burke and Madeline Beaumier. Today, we are thrilled to present the artist Nick Stull. As a brief reminder, everyone tuning in today is in listen-only mode, so feel free to utilize that chat function to ask questions, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of the talk. Also, please keep in mind that because we're presenting from separate locations, there might be variation of bandwidth, so if one of us freezes up or the sound fluctuates, thanks in advance for bearing with us. All right, thanks everyone, and welcome, Nick.
Hey everyone, it's great to be here. I'm thrilled to be a part of the current show at the Rife and very excited to talk with you guys today. I'm going to be just kind of giving a overview of my kind of artistic journey here in Columbus in the past 15 years or so. And I'll go to the next slide. And that will kind of start with kind of my undergraduate work at Ohio Wesleyan. And then I'll be talking a lot about my fine artwork, my experimental portraits and figurative paintings, some of which are in the current show at the Rife, as well as some themed artwork, paintings that deal with people interacting with water, as well as some horse-themed paintings, and also art-related positions that have kind of influenced I guess my art practice as just kind of my art outlook and relationship with the arts in Columbus. And then lastly, kind of the last part of the talk will be about my murals. And they kind of are grouped into themes of portraits, community, and commercial. It'll be roughly chronological, but I'll kind of be, going a little bit back and forth as a lot of these things kind of overlap in different ways. So first, I'll kind of start talking about my undergraduate work. I, growing up, I was into art and doing figurative work, but I really didn't get into painting too much until college. And when I started, I really kind of was moving or kind of wanted to kind of get a stronghold of the medium. So I kind of was seeking that kind of realistic approach, as you can see with the painting on the left side. But then kind of quickly moved more towards some looser painting styles, although they were still a little bit rigid as far as kind of their system, I guess you could say. But these are three paintings from kind of my undergrad experience. And with these, as well as paintings you'll see of figures I'll be showing later on, a lot of my subjects are kind of people I know or acquaintances. A lot of times I'm doing portraits that aren't necessarily about that individual, although subconsciously some things might come out, but usually it's kind of just using that individual to convey a certain idea or a theme. And then here are just a couple. I'm also going to be kind of showing some influences from certain artists on my work in undergrad and afterwards. But these are a couple of artists who were influential to me in undergrad as far as their portrait work. The artist Robert Arneson on the left side, although he's known, I think, primarily for ceramic work, he was part of the kind of the funk movement in the 70s in California. I really kind of gravitated towards his lithographs and drawings because of kind of his use of mark making to convey one thing, but then his use of color to kind of still convey form with the figure. And similarly, the artist Chuck Close on the right, although his stuff was a little more restrained, he had a kind of a similar approach that I was interested in, using color and shape, or I'm sorry, color and value to kind of convey form while the mark making was doing a different thing altogether. Here are some drawings, some charcoal drawings I did in undergrad. And a lot of my charcoal drawings were, I was really into the kind of chiaroscuro, the kind of the strong light contrast, to kind of create a psychological and moody effect. But I was also into kind of doing some like humorous plays on some of the portraits as well, to kind of create a bit of a disconnect with those two things. Um, and in the next slide here are some of the influences of mine as it pertains to drawing in college. On the left is Alberto Giacometti. You might know him primarily for like his sculptural work, but I really did love his drawings as well. His kind of frenetic line work was very interesting to me, and very emotional. Kathy Kollwitz, the artist in the middle, I loved her work just because it really, I mean, her work is so gripping and very emotional, and it really kind of caught me in a way that I felt like no artist had prior at that time. And then Damier, the artist on the right, great draftsman, but and also kind of a political commentator. So he was, very technically skilled, but also his work was pretty kind of comedic as well, and I kind of was drawn to that. Here are a couple figurative paintings. So, after, doing or kind of getting acquainted with painting with portraits, I moved into some like larger figurative works. And I was interested with these and other works you'll see later on in kind of capturing the figure in a way that kind of isolated them within the picture plane. And I wanted to kind of use bright colors in the background to kind of bring that forward to kind of create that visual tension. And then in the painting on the left, you can see there's two figures using flip phones, which kind of dates this. But I was kind of phones were starting to become a thing at that time, and I was interested in the kind of uh, the disconnection that was starting to happen with people and their phones. And it's gone kind of a lot worse since then. But that was kind of something I was toying with at the time. Um, and then I was still kind of, and then with portraits, I was starting to do kind of play around with doing that similar effect with doing these aerial views, strong colors from the background again to kind of bring the background forward to kind of isolate or alienate the figure. Um, the image on the left is of an artist, Robert Longo, that I recall kind of being inspired by at the time. He had this series of figures kind of, I think he used a trampoline actually to capture these figures in midair and would render them in charcoal in a way that kind of made them very kind of realistic but very flat and static on the picture plane. And I was very interested in that effect. But I still kind of, with my paintings, wanted to kind of create a sense of um, yeah, I don't- emotion or humanity. So I still kind of stuck with the skin tones and wanted to kind of convey some of the mark making with the paint as well. Here are some other kind of examples of portraits from around a bit after graduation, I guess maybe 2011. Um, Still kind of these figures are, like the ones before, kind of anonymous or kind of guarded. In this case, they're wearing, a thick hat and thick clothing to kind of conceal the identity. So I think with those images or with those previous paintings and these and some other ones I'll show you, um, I'm always kind of grappling with that uncertainty of identity or kind of this elusiveness of the figure, and how it is, this kind of I don't know, universal desire to kind of always want to understand what a person is, despite it being maybe difficult at times. And then on the other hand, here are some images where, at least on the one in the middle on the left, you are more engaged with the figure, still employing some of the same kind of formal techniques of a kind of solid background, or in the case of the left, a bright background. Um, but these figures are a little more frontal and a little more exposed and less guarded than some of the other ones. Here are a couple or a few painters that were very influential at the time and still are, to be honest. On the left is Lucian Freud. I was very inspired by I mean, his kind of subdued palette, but really his just like his thick layering of paint and how that really created kind of a physical presence with his figures. I thought also the kind of the vantage point that he would put on his figures, especially in this situation here, was interesting. David Hockney in the middle, excuse me, very drawn to his use of color, his use of pattern, and and then Francis Bacon on the right. Well, I'd say his approach is maybe a little different than mine. I was very drawn to his placement of the figures in the paintings, and also his very kind of unique color palette. It's usually very kind of unexpected, but very interesting and unforgettable. Here are some larger narrative paintings, and these and kind of some other ones I'm going to show in the next slides. I'm also going to be showing some kind of artists who influenced these. But I was trying to kind of loosen up and kind of create these narrative scenes that were I guess at the time I was interested in commenting on the kind of the seduction and sensationalism of the media and how often that's a distraction for other things. So in some of these paintings I'll be showing, I wanted to create kind of an intense, dramatic situation, but the figures were kind of pointing or looking to something going on off the canvas that we might not know what that is exactly. Um, and so these two paintings are kind of similar in that sense. Um, they're kind of hyper energized, strong colors. The individual, at least on the left, being depicted are again kind of these sensational figures, but they're kind of pointing and looking at something else that's happening. And these are a few painters who are very influential to those narrative paintings from that period of time. Um, Daniel Richter, artist on the left, a German painter, very much drawn to his kind of loose brushstrokes and his layering of paint and his use of color. His works to me a lot of times kind of registered as like these heat maps almost as far as like how he kind of conveys the figures in the space. Neo Rao, the artist in the middle, very drawn to his work because his he was able to kind of create or he creates these narrative scenes that are almost kind of out of time. He uses kind of these antiquated scenes mixed with these kind of modern approaches. So just the kind of whole narrative that he would create was always very fascinating to me. And then Dana Schutz, the artist on the left, I love her use of color and her again like the similar to kind of Lucian Freud, the way she's able to kind of create these kind of really thick impasto paintings that give a very luscious kind of visceral feel to them. They're just very impactful, especially kind of seen in person. They're just kind of they're almost overwhelming in a good way. And then, like I was saying, I'm going to kind of, veer from some of my artwork to talk about some of my art positions in the past 10 or 15 years. And during this time, from around 2009 to 2014, I owned a gallery with a few other people, including Maddie, the curator of the show. She was a curator for our gallery at this time. And this our group shows we did each month we did group shows with kind of floor to ceiling walls covered with our work, maybe 20, 30, 40 artists. It was really a great experience because it allowed me to just, I mean, very in a quick period of time connect with a lot of the artists in Columbus and the art scene in general. And I just was exposed to just so many different artists and ways of making art and ways of, yeah, ways of making art, and that kind of pluralistic attitude has kind of really informed my thoughts and feelings about the art world. And it's just and since since being a part of this gallery, it's been great continuing relationships with a lot of these artists and community members. And yeah, it's just a wonderful experience to be a part of this at that time. Here are some more images from that period. On actually in the middle on the left, we did a lot of events and art classes at our gallery. Again, different ways to kind of just bring in the community and create connections and collaborations with other individuals and groups. And the image on the right is actually taken from a show, a reunion show with 83 Gallery that we did in 2022 at Blockfort Gallery. And so you can see Maddie right in the left there. She helped curate the show. And then Jeff Collins, who's actually still currently running 83 as of the last couple of years. He's doing awesome things. Definitely check them out. Next, after the gallery kind of closed up shop at that time, I was kind of looking for things to do. I was still making artwork, still doing my figurative artwork thing. But at this time, I started doing sign painting and some other kind of graphic mural work for a guy named Andrew Kern, a good friend of mine. He owns a company in town called Flat Black Commercial Visuals, and they do amazing stuff. You should check them out. But it was really with him that I learned a lot of the techniques and processes for kind of bringing an image onto a large surface, or making, a small image large, and just using kind of the right paints to use, the right techniques to kind of create certain effects. It was really kind of through Andrew that I learned and became comfortable with doing larger work, which would help certainly to inform my mural work that I'll show you later on. Here's some other examples of some projects I worked on with Andrew. Again, like a lot of kind of sign painting around town, a lot of painted graphics. Learned how to do kind of different faux techniques, and yeah, it's a really great experience to be doing that at that time. Now I'm going to move kind of back into my figurative paintings. This I started to kind of take some new approaches to my portraits around this time, in that I started to kind of become interested in combining, making portraits that combined a variety of different materials and processes of mark making. Um, this also, these images wearing goggles, is also kind of a prelude to my interest in um, doing these water paintings where I would kind of render individuals interacting with water in different ways. And these are also some of the first paintings I did where I included this kind of French toile um, technique, which I've kind of carried over to this day in a lot of ways, both in my portrait work and sometimes in my mural work. I'm interested in doing in that kind of patterning because I love kind of like the flat passiveness of that wallpaper and how that kind of contradicts the kind of more present physical mark making of the painting. And those kind of two contradictory methods, I think, work together in an interesting way. Here are kind of some more examples of some portraits from that time where I'm using some different kind of materials and ideas. Again, you have come to some of the French toile design stuff on the left here on that figure, and then some kind of different ideas and patterns going on the right side here. Um, and then here, here are a couple kind of two water paintings that are important and kind of impactful to kind of some of my work I've done in this area. The painting on the left, and again, they're kind of similar kind of scenes, but they're taken, I guess these were done about 7, 8 years apart. The one on the left is from 2017. The one on the right, Darien Gap, which is also in the Rife show currently, is from last year. And they both are dealing with people interacting with or being kind of confronted with water. And I'm using kind of these a lot of kind of line work, a lot's going on to kind of create a certain kind of visual intensity, a certain psychological intensity with the figures. The painting on the left, the the kind of subject matter or exactly what's going on is a little more ambiguous. But the painting on the right has more kind of a specific background to it. And I'm just going to kind of quickly kind of read a little excerpt of what that painting's about. Um, Heading north to escape the perils of their homeland, this group of migrants are braving the elements to cross what many believe to be the most dangerous place on earth, the Darien Gap. Located in Panama's Darien province, this area is part of Panama's isthmus that connects American continents with Central America. And the gap refers to the interruption of the Pan American Highway, a 65-mile stretch where no roads exist. Um, and this area is characterized, the reason it's kind of considered to be so dangerous is it's characterized with heavy rain, flash flooding. There's no law enforcement and medical support in that area. There's a lot of gang activity and just kind of the things you associate with being in a jungle, poisonous plants, animals, um, steep mountainous terrains, things like that. But the individuals in this painting, I wanted to kind of render as this tight-knit group as they waded through this river in the Darien Gap. They're rendered in a way that suggests kind of a solid sculptural singular unit in order to kind of underscore their close connection and reliance on each other. Their strength and resilience is represented by their connection to the various armored catfish species that are boldly traveling the rivers beneath them. And then here are some close-ups of that painting. particularly, I included a few of these hummingbirds that are native to the area. But the one in the middle, the rufous hummingbird, actually is one of the only hummingbirds to migrate, and it goes north to the Rocky Mountains every year. So, like those migrants traveling north, this animal is also um, traveling north, and it kind of represents the universal drive of all beings trying to seek a life worth living. And inscribed kind of within that hummingbird is a landscape of the Rocky Mountains as well. Now, just to kind of go back a second, I just kind of wanted to describe my kind of influence or kind of what has influenced me to make water paintings. And I think from kind of an early age, I've been very um, drawn to the water. My grandparents had a cottage in Wisconsin that we visited every year, and I loved being on the lake, swimming, boating, observing wildlife, and things like that. And then the two images on the right, actually, fast forward to 2018. That's my wife and I in this boat, and that's our wedding ceremony. We chose to do kind of a canoe ceremony because our we love boating, love the water, and our families do as well. So we thought this would be a fun, kind of intimate um, experience. So yeah, water's kind of been a close, um, an important part of me. I also love swimming laps, and for exercise and things like that. But with a lot of my water paintings, I also wanted to explore not just kind of, why I like the water, but also just kind of what water means to other people and how a lot of populations are confronted with water in ways that maybe are less than ideal, I'd say, to put it mildly. Um, and so a lot of my paintings, I kind of want to show how this humans are interacting with this kind of the overwhelming force of water. So these next paintings are some paintings of individuals in um, in boats or rafts. The painting after the flood on the left side is the imagery is sourced from a newspaper clipping of a rescue boat during a flood. And in that painting, and like my other paintings like this, I wanted to kind of underscore a visual intensity by rendering the figures in a way that makes them kind of enigmatic and otherworldly. Um, I um, I wanted to kind of do this to underscore the fear and uncertainty that exists within this group as they're floating through either these real or metaphorical uncharted territories. And so that kind of theme continues with the three of these paintings. The painting in the middle, called Subcutaneum number two, and I'll go to the next slide, is part of this particular series um, called Subcutaneum. And this was a show I partnered on with my wife Liz. She's also an amazing artist, and we've done a lot of collaborations together. And I'll be sharing some of her stuff in the upcoming slides as well. Um, but this series of works, Subcutaneum, refers to the human's subcutaneous layer. It's a kind of our an epidermal layer that we have that keeps us warm and afloat. And surprisingly, it is as thick as most aquatic and semi-aquatic animals. Um, and so we kind of took that idea and wanted to render these portraits or individuals or scenes where the individual seems very closely connected with water. Um, in a lot of areas, there's a loose style in these works that kind of conveys this fluid passage of individual between the environments. Part of the faces might appear unfinished, and translucent layering might reveal the process. And this effect kind of unfixes the people in their place as they fade and drift between the sky, the surface of the sea, and below the sea as well. And I guess the idea of these works in general were to kind of propose a human existence that may have once existed in multiple environments. Okay. Now I'm just going to kind of talk about horses have become kind of a theme a reoccurring theme or motif in some of my paintings over the years. And I've been drawn to horses, I think mainly because they are so entangled with human activity. And in that sense, they become kind of a symbolic extension of human portraiture. Horses have been utilized and exploited by humans in a myriad of ways through conflict and battle, transportation and building, sport and gambling, leisure, luxury, power, and status, to name a few. And in the United States, horses are often used to represent the traditional American notion of desire, individuality, and freedom. And much like my experimental portraiture, I'm kind of interested in representing this complex and conflicted relationship with horses by combining a number of different methods of paint application and styles. The combination of layers of representation and abstraction are aimed to create an intricate construction of a horse while also expressing its vulnerability and individuality. And in these cases, I'm, conveying horses and, kind of bringing my interest in water into the theme as well. Here's a series jumping to that was another collaboration with my wife Liz, and it's called Vessel Verses. It was shown at Blockford in 2020, um, and we started this kind of hooded idea theme right before the pandemic. But I think as the pandemic was happening and kind of unfolding, it started to kind of evoke more ideas or concepts with this project or this series. And I'll just kind of read a brief excerpt about it. The Vessel Verses, it's an exploration of vessels and the stories they carry. In these works, both the figures and objects serve as vessels. Boats and coats are physical vessels that hold the person, whereas the individual is a conceptual vessel that holds the self, mind, and spirit. Together, they narrate the traveler's physical and philosophical journeys through life. Um, Weaving multiple styles in media emphasizes the separation of the vessel's interior from its exterior and from its interior and exterior environment. Um, and I will say that this was a very fun one to collaborate on with Liz. In part, I think we had of these hoodie pieces that were kind of a bit of a subset of the show. We had 16 of them, and it was a fun way for us to kind of just pass them back and forth and try different styles and techniques and kind of, I don't know, it was just a very good kind of collaborative setup to kind of figure out which things worked and which things didn't. And yeah, it was a very enjoyable process. Here are some other kind of continuations of that hood theme I've done in the past few years, kind of in similar, but some different kind of iterations. Here are some more water paintings. Two of which, the one in the middle and the one on the right, are in the current show, and I'll talk about those. Vessels, the paint in the middle. It depicts individuals are depicted serving as vessels for a thought or feeling that appears maybe incongruous to their surroundings. Existing in what appears to be a harsh, frigid, and turbulent environment, the faces of these figures convey a serene landscape and floral arrangements. The narrative of this painting presents the concept of the surface in multiple ways. The glowing, otherworldly surface of the water, the surface of the face as a way of replicating the individual's identity with a more universal concept and feeling, and various styles of like loose brushstrokes, aerosol fades, and tight rendering that formally refer to the surface of the canvas itself. And then the fox and the coelacanth, the image on the right, like the painting I showed a few slides ago, after the flood, the figures in these paintings are sourced from photos of individuals navigating waters during a flood. And in these kind of post-disaster images, I'm always struck by kind of random pieces of pop culture and other relics of consumerist culture because those kind of whimsical, arbitrary objects seem out of place in such a harsh setting. And that kind of disturbing juxtaposition emphasizes the unsettling story that is depicted. And specifically, the title of the painting, The Fox and the Coelacanth, points to that visual tension. The fox refers to the animal cartoon character in the tote bag carried by the figure in the back of the painting. And the coelacanth refers to an ancient fish that was kind of thought to be extinct for millions of years, only to kind of be rediscovered relatively recently. And I wanted to kind of include these two extremes, an expendable kind of contemporary, um, piece of ephemera in the bag, as well as the living fossil that is the coelacanth fish, kind of to underscore that narrative, anxiety, and strangeness of the flood scenes, and to kind of convey the ongoing and unrelenting power of water and the primitive creatures that it possesses. Now I'm going to kind of move more to my experimental portraiture work. This is kind of some more of the recent stuff I've been doing. I think, although these are maybe from around 2020. So here I'm kind of, and as I'll kind of be showing with some of my portrait mural work, I'm into, again, kind of creating these portraits that combine a lot of um, disparate styles and methods of mark making. I am doing this because I kind of want to convey the complexity and almost the kind of contradictory thought patterns that are characteristic of the human psyche. So kind of in doing so, I wanted to, again, kind of create these methods of mark making that seem just very different from kind of the very kind of tedious, almost passive line drawings of some of these kind of again the French trowel patterning or flower patterning with kind of more intense direct mark making and drips and aerosol fades and things like that. In some cases, kind of the ones in the middle and the left are a little bit looser, where the one on the right is a bit tighter. And that's, I think, in some of the portraits I've been doing over the years, it's sometimes I'll just kind of feel in a more tight mood for a certain piece, and some get a little bit looser. I'm not sure why, but it just kind of that's how it kind of sorts out as the painting progresses. Here are some more paintings kind of in that vein. These are a little bit more restrained and a little bit more thematic. For these three, the kind of imagery within the figures relates kind of to their title and maybe a particular kind of physical location. So on the left is Care in the Desert, where there's maybe colors and themes related to the desert or kind of themes of out west. And then like in the middle, there's Michael by the Lake, water themes, and then these kind of more flower floral themes refer to Molly in the Garden on the right side. And here are some experimental drawings or paintings that I've done relatively recently where I'm doing that same style, but in this case, I'm doing them as a commission. And these are super fun to do. I love kind of working with the client or with a client to kind of um, discuss the different kind of subject matter, themes, ideas, feelings, expressions to kind of include in this painting of this individual that they want depicted. So that kind of back and forth ideation process is a lot of fun, and it's just a fun kind of challenge to kind of bring these to fruition in a way that best kind of expresses that individual. Here's a couple more commissions with the same kind of process. Here are some kind of experimental portraits where they're a little more subdued and they are more anonymous. I guess kind of referring back to some of the portraits I showed earlier on, um, these become more kind of about the pattern and the background and less about the individual. Although you might try to kind of take ideas from the patterning or coloring to kind of connect that with maybe the individual's thoughts or feelings. And here's some other recent portraits where kind of almost the opposite is happening. It's the only, whereas these past ones, there's no eye contact or kind of connection with the individual. There's more of kind of a distance or an aloofness, I suppose. These have more of a kind of direct connection where it's only the eyes being depicted. And then in these cases, I would kind of fill out the body with a narrative scene And a lot of these are water themed, but they might serve to kind of give an idea of this person's thoughts, feelings, or perhaps experiences. Here's another recent horse painting that's kind of very in line with some of these recent portraits I've shown you, trying to convey a lot of different styles and techniques, um, and bring it together to kind of create this dynamic representation of a horse. And I did on the right side, there's an image that's kind of a close-up of one of the hoofs. And I don't know if it was kind of maybe starting with this painting in particular, but with some paintings I've been doing, I want to kind of create a painting within a painting or like kind of a window into some other world. And so I feel like kind of that's an interesting um, or interesting tactic where it's something you might not see right away, but you're kind of if you come up close to look at the painting, you're kind of rewarded with that experience. Here's another kind of recent horse painting where I it's a little bit more kind of subdued and passive, but in terms of the color and the layering, but still a lot of the same techniques apply. And again, there's another kind of little window into a different world that's in the hoof of this horse. Um, Here's a slide that kind of just I wanted to show a bit of the process behind some of those experimental portraits. They involve a lot of layering, a lot of tape is involved. A lot of these paintings, again, like I think I mentioned, they use a lot of different materials, including oil paint, acrylic, spray paint, ink pen, and charcoal at times. And kind of, I need to be wary of when I can use those materials so that they will kind of stick to the picture plane or stick to the canvas. So it's quite a process to bring it together, and usually the first number of layers are a little uncertain as I'm kind of trying to figure out where things are going to be placed. But once I kind of start layering things, it becomes more of a fun kind of construction project, I guess. Here's another, just a little process, some process images of a recent horse painting. A lot of tape used in this one to kind of create the lines in the background and the hard edges around the horse. And again, in the kind of the back of the horse, using a lot of the French toile wallpaper technique to kind of flatten it and create a interesting separation between that side and the more kind of realistic or photorealistic horse on the right panel. And now I'm going to kind of jump back to an art-related position I held for a number of years at the Wexner Center for the Arts. I was still doing a lot of artwork and experimental portraiture while working at the Wex. But at the Wex, it was just I worked there as an exhibit designer for 5 years, and it was a wonderful experience, not only obviously to be able to kind of connect with and work with just a ton of amazing contemporary artists, but I just learned a lot about creating kind of visual presentations, be it in digital form or like with these physical mock-ups on the right side, um, that really kind of helped inform how I would present concepts for murals, as I'll be showing you later on. And I also, what came with that job during installation periods was a lot of work with aerial equipment, and it was kind of through learning how to use lifts and problem solve things in the moment that really influenced my mural work as far as kind of being comfortable with using that kind of equipment that is necessary for doing large scale murals at times. So from there, I'll kind of start. I'm going to talk about. I quit the Wax in 2021, and it was bittersweet to leave the Wax. I loved it very much, but I at the time was starting to find success with my own artwork and mural work, so I started to do it full time, and I started a company called Daybblink Creative. Dayblink, which is a nautical term, it refers to a moment at dawn when a lookout can see above low-lying mist from a point on the mast of a ship. And I'm going to kind of focus primarily on the mural work I do with my company, as that's kind of like the majority of the work I do these days. And it's gonna be kind of a blend of commercial, public, and residential mural work. First, I'm going to talk about my portraits and kind of show how my studio work, my experimental portraiture kind of directly relates or informs my mural work. And this is an example of kind of one of the first murals I did where I used kind of one of my portraits. In this case, the client specifically requested I incorporate the portrait on the left into the mural. And here's another example of a portrait on the left that kind of influenced the mural on the right. It's the same subject, or the same individual is portrayed in both. But just kind of on the left side, I wanted to take that kind of use of mark making on the face and carry that over to the mural on the right side. Here's another example. Again, the same individual is portrayed both in the canvas painting on the left and the mural on the right. I'm kind of in both cases employing the same kind of dynamic directional line work, the same kind of geometry. The painting on the left, though, is, a little bit looser, and I'm kind of hoping to maybe loosen up some of my murals moving forward to kind of capture that kind of feeling. Here's another one that kind of combines, or that, is influenced by the painting on the left side. And then this kind of the series I showed before, where it was just kind of showing more of a flat silhouette, almost of an individual, with just kind of a piece of the face being shown. I kind of carried that over into this mural as well. Here is a mural I did last year, and it is a depiction of my daughter, Elle. She loves to swing, and it was just kind of a joy making this and being able to depict her kind of in mid-flight. Um, Included kind of as you zoom in on the swing is a image of a breaching humpback whale to kind of can further convey that kind of feeling of weightlessness or liberation from swinging. Here's another mural, similar kind of to my portraits, where I'm combining some different kind of imagery and symbols and ideas. And these next few paintings, I know kind of got to move a little bit quickly with time here, but I want to just talk about a few muralists who are very influential to me. This artist, um, Iriz, I love his work. I love the way he can take his studio work, the image you see on the left, and translate it to portraits or translate it to these large scale murals on the right or in the middle and on the right. The way he's still kind of able to capture that mark making and that color palette is really intriguing to me. Um, I'm interested in this kind of duo. These artists, I love the way they're able to kind of create this mark making, both, in their studio work and how they can translate that to large scale work to create kind of this depth and expressive energy. I'm really kind of drawn to that. And then this last artist, Connor Harrington, he has the piece on the left is a piece on canvas he did, and then the one on the right is him working on a large mural. And I'm very drawn to his ability um, to allow the paint to drip like that and to kind of create that effect. Um, it's it's very visceral. It's very emotionally kind of gripping to me. Also, it just seems like it would be kind of a challenge, or I would be scared to kind of take that risk to make things drip like that on a large scale, just because you just kind of don't see what you're doing until you can kind of like pull back and look at it. But I'm really drawn to the way he does it, and I think it's very successful the way he does it. And I'm gonna talk about a few more of my public art murals. Here's one I did last year that I was able to combine water. This one was done for the city, and it was The project kind of involved showing the kind of all-encompassing effects of water in our daily life, be it through kind of nature, recreation, just from the tap. And I wanted to kind of convey that all-encompassing nature of water in this kind of wraparound building. That is actually a pump house on the Olentangy River. Here's a project I did a couple years ago. I'm going to dedicate a few slides to this just because it was a very big project and a lot of folks went in were crucial to making this happen. Penny included was a part of this project, as well as I'd say a dozen other amazing Columbus artists. This was for Sullivan Avenue. It's under the I-70 overpass. The title of the mural is Intersections, and I wanted to kind of create a design that showed how kind of nature, commerce, residential, how just kind of all these different entities connected or overlapped to kind of create a community. And here are some images of the process. Um, and here's a few images of the finished product. And again, I'm kind of using these lines, overlapping lines or junctions where different kind of, posterized or abstract things would occur at these intersections. And lastly, the one of the exciting parts about this mural is that the city installed a LED, a permanent LED light installation to coincide with the design of the mural, which served not just to kind of enhance the mural's design, but also to light up the space and make it safe for pedestrians at nighttime. Here is another mural I did recently for Westerville, and this was a fun project where I was able to kind of combine a bunch of historical figures and imagery characteristic of Westerville, kind of in my portrait style. Here's another recent project for Ohio Westland where I made 12. These are actually, I digitally rendered these and they were kind of put up on with vinyl. But I did 12 different individuals and kind of in my portrait style was able to kind of convey a variety of different individuals, demographics, races, ethnicities, body types. The idea was to kind of create this very encompassing group of individuals within this portrait series. This one is a mural I did kind of toward the end of last year, which is not, my typical subject matter, maybe falls more toward the kind of commercial end of what I do. But nevertheless, it was a fun project to kind of combine all these figures in this kind of energetic way, all these arcade figures that we recognize. Here's kind of more of a commercial mural I did a few years ago. That was exciting but challenging just to kind of figure out the logistics of painting a mural on a rooftop. Um, and then this wall mural kind of accompanied it. And there's our first daughter, Elle, for scale on the left side there. That's a bit of a process shot. Here's a mural a couple years ago that was also kind of a fun technical challenge to render this Air Jordan shoe for a company called GFNF in Grandview, Ohio. Here is a recent project for Kroger that opened in Plain City at the end of last year. And in this kind of mural installation, I chose to choose these different kind of public art pieces around that particular area that I thought were very intriguing and kind of engaged with the landscape in interesting ways. Here is a mural I did a few years ago for a adventure or a kind of recreational supply store in Portsmouth, Ohio. And another kind of more commercial mural, but a kind of a fun technical challenge for a eye care company in Grove City. Here is a large whale I painted for an event space in the warehouse district in Columbus. This was another kind of fun challenge to get that on the wall. And then here's kind of another kind of commercial mural I did for an electric company in Columbus. On the right side is kind of a process view of a sticker stencil that I used to do the lettering. And I didn't mention this, but I use, for some of text or other kind of hard-edged items in my portraits or murals, I'll use um, a paint mask or a sticker stencil to kind of achieve that effect. Here is a mural project for a coffee shop in Pittsburgh. On the left is I portrayed Francisco Morazan, who was a kind of liberal Honduran leader in their history. And then the right mural was actually designed by my wife Liz. It's a Mayan coffee goddess. And this was a very fun experience for us both to travel to Pittsburgh to meet the owners of this coffee shop and to kind of create this mural project for them was definitely a fun and fulfilling experience. Here's another mural in the short north, where I'm kind of combining elements of line work and posterized work as kind of characterized by some of the portraits I've shown you in other murals. I think this is my last slide. And this is kind of more of a straightforward kind of commercial logo painting project last year that still was kind of an enjoyable because it was a technical challenge in itself to kind of render that graphic onto this corrugated surface at that scale. So that's everything. Are there any questions?
What a great and in-depth look at your work. Thank you so much. So we have a more formal question about how you receive work. So let me try and couch
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Artists have many paths that they can take, and you've shown that through this presentation, the kind of circuitous way in which you might find yourself. And so, what suggestion or piece of advice would you give to someone as they're looking to build their art business, thinking about the past that you have had and the many jobs that you've taken? What was it consistent that helped you kind of stepstone from each and build yeah, your cadre of clients?
That is a great question. I would say I mean, yeah, let me think about that for a second. It's it's always good to kind of be, or I've tried to be opportunistic with every path I've taken. And I find that like, even if you're not maybe making art at that moment for a living, doing something that stays kind of within the arts is always great because you will make connections and collaborate with different individuals and kind of learn new skill sets that might be applicable to something that you might do down the line. Um, I would say also find kind of the people that you look up to in your community and want to learn from and kind of attach yourself to them in some way. And I feel like there's just been, a handful of individuals throughout my journey that have been so influential to me, and I'm very grateful for that. And then in turn, I kind of want to hope to be able to do that for other individuals as well as I bring people on to work on murals of mine. It's really kind of a goal in the next, few years. And I've been doing this a bit, but I want to really be able to have jobs where I can bring on, individuals and pay them to help with the mural, but then also kind of teach them the tricks of the trade, things that were just kind of taught to me, and kind of pass that information along. So, I suppose, yeah, I guess, finding the people that you look up to and just seeing how you can kind of be a part of their life in some way has been helpful. And yeah, I guess that's kind of, and in with the murals, I suppose, a lot of my murals started small, I just would, it would be like kind of maybe a small opportunity, but it was something to add to the portfolio. And then I was able to kind of build off of that and get something a little bit larger. And then someone saw that, and that was kind of able to snowball into something larger. And it just kind of really was a stepping, effect. So I don't know. I hope that's helps.
I think that's great. And so you mentioned something kind of towards the end there where you were talking about endeavoring to get projects where you can keep the door open for other folks. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of community in your experience as an artist here, specifically in this
Yeah.
space? Like you
Yeah,
touched
absolutely.
on. Yeah.
Well, I will say that, I mean, and I guess I've talked a lot about maybe the how in some of my works and not the why, but I will say with mural work, I love it because it does, it's part of the community. It's not in a gallery, it's not tucked away. While I do love gallery work and I kind of do love that environment, I do love mural work because it is very connected with the community. And also it is not as far as the way I learned it and the way a lot of people learn it, it hasn't been in school. It wasn't taught. It was taught through community members and it was kind of passed on. It's like this, trade mentorship kind of thing. Um, and I really, I like that kind of learning experience. And I, I of course value the education experience, and that brings a lot of necessary ideas and thoughts and stuff to kind of continue the momentum of art itself. But I love the kind of community experience of mural making, both in kind of how it's received and also kind of how it's painted, how it's taught, and all those things.
So maybe last question here. What are you most excited about currently, influence wise or project wise, or what you want to leave behind with viewer wise?
Um, I That's a good question. I I have some murals coming up I'm excited about. A lot of the murals I showed you in this presentation, or a certain amount, were large scale, and a lot of those had to deal with logistical challenges of using a lift and certain the terrain and the surface of the wall and stuff like that. But some of the murals I have coming up are a bit smaller and interior on drywall, and it's a chance for me to kind of really nerd out and kind of create more detail and create more effects that I've done in my portrait paintings that have previously been difficult to put into my mural work. So I'm hoping to kind of get even kind of more technical with some of these smaller murals I have coming up, and trying to I really I love some of the mural artists that influenced me that I showed you. I just love the way they can kind of take painterly aspects from their fine art work and show that in their large scale mural work. And I'm kind of hoping to do more of that moving forward.
Perfect. I think we're all going to keep a close eye out for all that good stuff to celebrate you out in the community. So, Nick, thank you again for the generosity of your time and talent.
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, such an honor. Thank you so much.
And thank you all for joining us for this artist talk by Nick Stull as a part of our programming series for It's an Honor to Be Here. I'd like to give a special thank you to the curators, Maddie and Maria. A big thank you to all the participating artists, as well as the Ohio Arts Council's board, the Ohio legislature, and the governor who support the Ohio Arts Council, this great space, and of course, Ohio artists. Thanks everyone and have a great day.